in panel and a report was non-binding, which means that they don't have to do what they say. If it's non-binding, it means that it's to make restitution, and there's a lot of different ways, because a lot of people say restitution in different cases.
Hey, George, we lost you. So basically what George is saying that it's two forms of payment. You're off now. Back. You're off right now. They have KUAW.org.
Okay.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Looks like I'm here.
Okay, but
all right. So, Eric, can you see me?
No, I can't see you.
Oh, man.
They keep showing the picture in your office. I think you still have your office laptop hooked up to the system. But what and then I think both of them need to be paid. And when you look at the disparities in every aspect of this country, whites are doing so much better than blacks. And it's not because blacks are inferior. It's not because blacks are trying. It's because the system have been built against African Americans. It's so horrible to where, you know, Italians and Irish from Europe over here, and they would benefit from the system because they was European descent, they're white. So it's a structural problem that needs to be addressed. And the sad thing about it is the Republicans don't even want the subject brought up. It's like they want you to run a race, and the person next to you have a 40 years head start. In no way possible can you catch up. And the only way to me is to correct that is free education and free housing. With free housing comes generational wealth, because if your home is paid for, that would make things a lot easier for African Americans, because right now in the metropolitan area, out of 100%, blacks own 30% of houses, and 70% of us are renting and leasing home properties, where 72% of whites in this area own, and 28% of them do not own homes, and most of them are college students. So you see a pattern when it comes down to generational wealth. And until we can able to pull ourselves up, it's impossible for that, because Europeans had a 40 years head start over us. And these same institutions are still there, oppressing us, like the justice system. You know, every month you hear someone being released from prison who've done 20 to 30 years, and they were innocent. So what happens is you have prosecutors and judges to where they see these guys, they might be a benefit to where they might not even be guilty, but they still go along and let this guy serve 20, 30 years in prison until the truth gets found out. I think that the justice system can be fixed if made them accountable and start charging judges, prosecutors when people spend their life in prison who's innocent. That's one aspect. You got medicine.
Yeah.
You know, it's more black women that die during childbirth and more black babies die than whites. Why is that? And nobody's addressing that. It's in every aspect, like car loans. Guess who paid the highest interest on a brand new car? Black women. Black women pay more for a car used in new than anybody else. And then after that, a black man does. So when you start looking at the automobile industry, you look at medicine, you look at lawsuits, dealing with a lawsuit. Guess who get paid out more? Whites do. When whites go out and sue someone, they get larger sums of money where blacks get a portion of that, a third. So that's why I believe that reparation and restitution is very important, because in every aspect of this country, you see this system there that oppresses us and keep us from generating wealth. I think why we should go after the United States for reparation and restitution, because of they didn't allow us to create generational wealth. They this horrible education system for a long time. And every George.
Well, I think that we'd have to look back. I see I'm on there, but I don't see that you.
Yes, I got you. I see you.
Okay. Yeah. Well, one thing I'm saying is the African American leaders and asked them what they wanted, the ones that had just become free. And they asked for land. And Sherman talked with the Secretary of State. They pushed out an order that gave 40 acres to every one of those freed slaves that were in Georgia, Florida, South Carolina. They had shoreline that they gave them 40 acres. And that was in place. That order was given, but that was just a general's order at wartime. Now, what happened was that after Lincoln got assassinated, which was right at the end of the Civil War, and he was assassinated, his replacement was Andrew Johnson. Johnson was a Southern sympathizer. So what he did after he got in was to cancel that order and took that land back from the blacks that had got it. And stuff. So it's not like it was something that did happen. They did receive the land. They were moving into the land. That order was repealed. And that view was never order after consultation with the White House that this is what was going to happen because the war was still going on. But at the end of the war, you so happen the person that made the agreement is killed. The next guy in says, no, we're going to stop that. So that started the ball on the way to where as more laws got changed, blacks lost more and more rights, especially in the South. So that they were denied the reparations that they were given that a lot of people had saw was due to them, because you have free people and give them nothing to sustain themselves freely. And that was a problem that started at the very beginning. When you freed a lot of the slaves, the thing with that freedom was that it didn't come with any other guarantees. So it's like you start off and you don't have the land, you don't have the money, you don't have the education, and you're in a hostile area. You're in a part of the country that had just been in rebellion with the government. So it was very hard for them to say, come up at that time, because they didn't start off coming up with. So then we had to try and come up. But the idea of reparations, which can be made, the first thing we have to do is get the government to say that reparations are owed. Because we don't even have to talk about what it's like when you go to court. If you go to court with a lawsuit, the first thing they do is determine if the party is guilty. After the party is guilty, then they go into the suit or how to make it right. So first things first is that we have to start getting on the legislature, and just like is being talked at by a lot of people, is to get the case brought up for reparations. Because then you can talk about the remedies. But if we talk about the remedies and everybody gets fixated on that, what we're on this, that, and other stuff, then you're not looking at what was the act. First, we have to find the act. If you're guilty of owing reparations, then you can talk about how reparations should be done. You know, people are getting, a lot of people get, I'm not going to pay for this, and we didn't do it, and this and that. Nobody knows what the remedy would be. We have to come together and meet and discuss the remedy, but first we've got to say that reparations are owed. And we have to get the apology from the government for what was done. That's the same way the Japanese did after their internment. First, the government have to say they were wrong and admit, that they were wrong and they're sorry. Then you started talking. Then the Japanese started talking about, okay, what can you do to make it right? Then we talk about the solutions, and the solutions for 270 something years of slavery can be varied. What's the responsibility of the government? What percent did they pay into it? Did they endorse it? Did they actively fight to keep it? And those are things that would determine the amount of guilt that the government has. Yes, you could even look back and say there's some African nations that played a part in it. The British government played a part in it. So everybody has a part. So the United States government may not be 100% at fault, but we know they are at fault to a degree, or we believe they are. And then you would also look at the other parties that were involved in it also and start talking about, okay, what are the remedies? And I think remedies would be multifaceted, but that's something that with leaders, with different people looking at it, can really look at what's going on. It's just like Georgetown University, as it showed in the example that, you sent me that we had read. They've apologized for selling the 272 slaves that they sold to get the money to help build the university.
That's right.
And first thing was an apology. We admitted we was wrong and we apologized. Now, the next thing they say is they're going to pay tuition. There's going to be free tuition for the descendants of those slaves to go to college. So it's step by step. First, it's you have to admit the fault. And then you start talking about remedies, and remedies for different groups, different organizations can be different. But the country, the United States at first, has to admit that there was a problem. We haven't admitted that they were wrong. Everybody says it was bad and this, that, and other, but the government has not apologized and said we were wrong. That we were at fault for this and that we do owe something. So we've got to get that conversation to where we at least say, okay, there was a problem. It was wrong. So if you would say it's wrong, and if you say you were responsible for it, then let's start talking about how do we repair it. And there's a lot of different ways. And I don't think all of it, especially not in this day and age, if you said you was going to give every Black person $1 million, I don't think that would be a wise thing.
No, it wouldn't.
Because the one thing I know is without the education, without the systems in place to be able to use that, then it wouldn't be long before you're back in the same place.
That's right.
I think it's going to take programs of education, of workforce development, things that people need and stuff like that. And there will be some financial aid needed too. To people that were involved in that were hurt by that. But I think we've got to look at it We've got to sit down and talk about it and not get all fired up and say, wait a minute, let's look at this. And there was an effect that came after it. Now, how do we remedy it? How do we stop years and years of abuse? I was listening to a show the other day where they even talked about, as you say, the prison industrial system, that after freedom in the South, in many states, the sheriff, the police in town could actually charge you with a crime, have you put in jail, and your sentence would be to work for somebody.
Yes.
And that's what they did in a lot of places, that they actually kept on. This is in the 1800s and the 1900s, where blacks were charged with crimes just willy-nilly and used as workers in the fields.
Yes, it was. Yes.
And those people that you're holding are of one particular race, then there is a problem there, because that is a systematic system of making money off of people that don't get any benefits from it. That's slavery.
Yes.
So we have to look at that. We have to look at the fact that if are people getting charged unnecessarily or excessively for the same crime, that would be a thing that you look at. And a lot of times it is. Are people getting charged with a crime and nobody else is? Then that's showing a pattern of discrimination. It's like if you say most of the people that have been charged for marijuana crimes were Black. Well, something's wrong with the system if you know that there's probably as many whites, if not more, using marijuana as Blacks. So why come in all the records we see more Blacks being arrested, charged, given time for it than whites? It's something that you say now. Are people letting people go if they catch them of another race and saying, well, just don't do it no more, or this, that, and the other? And other people are not given that break, because you say, that marijuana use is widespread pretty evenly across all racial barriers.
Yes, they are.
A lot of young people, Black, white, Mexican, whatever. So then when you look at the arrest records or you look at the prison sentence, if most of the people that go to jail or get arrested for it are Black, then that kind of would give you a clue that there's maybe a problem here. Something isn't quite right. Same thing, and that's our justice system that we have to look at some of the systematic racism that's built in. Just like as we've seen the memes and stuff, as you talk about the riots, if Black people do it, a lot of times it's a riot. If white people do it, it's a protest. Same thing. They'll refer to them as the protesters, If it's Black people doing it and things get tore up and stuff, then they're the rioters. The thing I was looking at way back when Katrina happened, there was a thing where they showed a white couple in the news that had got food from a store, and it said they were getting necessities, through that. And they showed Black people getting the food from the store, and they were looting.
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah. So those type of discrepancies that go even beyond the justice system, sometimes in the way news is portrayed. So a lot of times I've watched the news and it'll come up that they're looking for a Black suspect. Then if he's not Black, they just say they're looking for a suspect.
Right.
Well, you don't say you're looking for a white suspect, but you'll definitely point it out if it's a Black suspect.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, So when people hear it, then they don't always. Then when they hear suspect, most of the time they heard it associated with black. If they say a suspect again, people have it in their mind that means a black person.
Right.
And a lot of times you hear that. So a lot of things, and I will complain, and we have to learn how to complain and complain forcefully, but complain, what do I want to say, in a way that gets recognition. We need to write more letters to the editor.
Yeah, we need to.
We need to do those type of things also. Not to say that's all we should do, but a lot of us have saw slights and this and that. Well, how many of you wrote a letter about it? How many of them have lodged a formal complaint? There's one thing to go off on the store clerk and cuss them out and knock stuff off the shelves. But how many formal complaints have been pushed up the chain? How many letters have actually been wrote? People say it don't do no good. Well, cussing that lady out at the cashier stand don't really do no good either.
No, it don't.
It might make you feel good for a minute that you really gave her a piece of your mind, but you have to do it again the next day. It never got to the CEO. It never got any farther up the chain. And we've got to start doing more of that. Start doing the documentation where you can say you've actually wrote this letter and sent it out 4 or 5 times. Because a lot of times when other people get things done, they come back and tell you what they've done and what they've shown, and they've got some documentation. That means a whole lot. That means a lot when you go to court. That means a lot even if you just go to arbitration or you go to talk to a company. If you say, well, hey, we got this meeting that was these 2,500 letters that you've been getting that was sent out, we never heard anything back. Well, now it's hard to ignore that it was documented, that it's down. So I would always implore people to not just get mad and throw a fit, but get mad and be direct about what you want to do and where you want to take that to. Right to the shareholders, to the chairman of the board if the CEO ain't working with it. Send a lot of letters to people that can make a difference, especially if it looks like they're going to start looking bad.
Right. That's true.
So we can work on reparations, but I think we've got to start at a level and start pushing it up. That we've got to start having those conversations, talk to our congressmen, our senators, and say, yeah, we want to talk about this that Biden has brought up. What are your opinions on it? How are you supporting him? Have we asked our congressmen, our state representatives and all them, are they supporting what the president says? Have they brought it up at the city council or at the state level? Because if it's just the president saying it, they'll say, well, hey, he'll be gone in 4 years. We don't have to, we can drag it along a while. But if there's a big groundswell saying that, no, they're talking to congressmen, they're talking to senators, they're talking to the judges, they're talking to a lot of people about this. And we want to know where they stand on reparations. And we need to find out where's our state representative, what's their stand on it publicly. What's our local city council, what's their stand on reparations. Some of them have been for it. Some cities have voted for reparations and stuff. What's been going on in Kansas City? I don't know. So I would say I've got to find that out also. But I'd like to say to all of our listeners is that these are the things that we need to do. We need to make a groundswell. We need to start locally and push it up to the national level. Because if you're sitting around waiting for the president to do it, that's only a certain level, and even what's done on the federal level doesn't hold the states or the cities accountable to do it. The state can say it's against the law. It's just like murder. Well, murder isn't a federal crime. So as far as the federal government's concerned, you ain't gonna get nothing changed about murder or police murder or rapes just with the federal government, because the federal government doesn't look at murder as a crime. That's the state's responsibility.
That's right.
To look at it. Unless you kill a federal officer, or a government worker, but me killing you or you on our state legislatures and state senators, because they have a lot of the power of our day-to-day lives. A lot of people will say, well, it's the president, this, that, and other. So a lot of times it's right there local. It's your state, it's your city, it's your county government. They got a lot to do with what happens to you day to day. But that's kind of my rant, my soapbox on the reparations. But I think that it's a conversation that we should have. And I would like to ask any listeners, if you want to comment on that, go to our Facebook page, KUAW-radio, and put your comments in on this. You may hear this at a later time. You may not be listening today, but if you hear it over the weekend or some other time while you're going through, contact KUAW. You can email us at KUAW985@gmail.com. Our Facebook page, KUAW-radio. Leave some comments. Our YouTube, KUAW Radio. We'd like to start the conversation. I think we should. So anybody that hears this, and it can be a month from now, we'll still want to talk about it. This ain't something that you say, oh, well, they did that video a while back. That's okay. Send us a note, send us some information. We can start talking about it. We can set up a Zoom meeting just to talk about reparations. So I think it's a good thing, and I think it's something that we ought to keep carrying forward.
I agree with that, George. Very important. It helps to lift out of poverty and stuff. A lot of times it sent believe that why are we in the situation we're in? And some of us blame ourselves, but no, the government engaged the private sector and imposed a lot of these laws, this institutional system to oppress us for 400 years until we recognize that and understand. Because a lot of times you believe that, well, the government didn't have that much of a say so. Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Our government engaged into a lot of institutionalized racism that exists in the world right now in America. South Africa, when they came up with apartheid, you know who they studied? America.
Right.
South Africa said that America have the perfect blueprint to oppress a group of people. South African whites said that. And they studied us, and they tried to duplicate that same process in South Africa. But the difference is the white South Africans are the minority. They're the minority, and the majority was blacks. It's the opposite here.
Right.
It's so hard to overcome this system because majority of the people in this country is white. And you have a certain percentage. You got a certain percentage that do care, and they think they should pay that debt. But you have a large percentage also believe that, hey, look, I wasn't a slave master. I didn't have slaves. Mm-hmm. Why should our tax dollars pay for the reparation of African Americans? Like, well, you benefit. If you white, you benefit from the system. You benefit from it.
Well, hey, it's been a good conversation, and we'll have to get back with it. You've been listening to the BFTAA and More show. I do apologize for some of the technical difficulties that we had at the beginning of this show. We're going to be working on that to see how we can get this Zoom working when I'm talking. Like you say, a lot of people, if you've been watching the station, everybody else is okay. But when I have to talk on the local side, then there's a problem with it. And it's definitely in the equipment and the way we've got it connected. So we're going to be working on that. But we thank you for joining us. Continue to support KUAW Radio. Your donations are welcome at any time. Go to our Facebook page or our webpage at www.kuaw.org, and you can make a donation on our PayPal link there. We'll be glad to accept anything you want to help support this radio station. But once again, Eric, I thank you for joining and your insights, and I look forward in 2 weeks to seeing you again, and we'll keep on keeping on.
Hey, thank you, George. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All righty. Have a good evening, everybody, and stay tuned for the next show that's coming up on KUAW. All right.